Hi everyone, so I have a very highly requested video for you today and it's on how to contour and highlight. I'm actually going to break this into two videos. I'm going to do the first one on contouring and highlighting with cream products, and then I'll do another video hopefully in a week or two on how to contour and highlight using only powder products. So we'll just get back to the cream, which is today, and who this suits really is anyone who wants something a little bit more natural and perhaps more dewy, because you can obviously get more of a dewy finish from using creams and liquids and stuff like that, or someone who is quite dry skinned. If you're very oily, you'll probably know yourselves that you need to stick with powder for most of the time, and that creams just won't last very long on your skin, so that's probably better avoided if you are very oily. I personally love to go for cream contouring when I'm looking for something a bit more daytime, something more natural, and like I said, something with a bit more of a dewy finish. I generally go for the cream contouring for daytime, and I'll often use then powdering more for nighttime. So you're really spoiled for choice when it comes to cream products nowadays. I actually have the contour and highlight cream thing from Tom Ford on the way as a present, which I'm really excited to get, but I'll show you what I have at the moment. So some of the things I really like to contour with would be these kind of palettes. So these were like you know, it's a foundation palette, but it has loads of different colours. I made this one up myself. It's a Kryolan, upside down, but Kryolan palette there, and I made it in Charles Fox when I was in London. So you could go for something like this, which is TV white, and that would be a perfect highlight on someone who has a similar skin tone with mine. Any of these colours though would be good highlights, you know, something like that would be better on someone who's a bit darker. And then you have your darker colours here, which could be used as contours, so I tend to use like this kind of colour. Another great option is something like this, which is similar. This is by Sedona. Again, it just contains loads of light colours and darker colours, which you can use to contour and highlight. Crown Brush also do a very similar palette, so those are brilliant if you want loads of options, particularly if you're a makeup artist and you want it for your kit. Those are brilliant. Now, other things I love, this is one that I use all the time, and it's the Illuminate Hollow Pigment, which is brilliant for very pale skin. So when I'm contouring pale skin like my own, I tend to go for colours like this that are a little bit ashy. You don't want anything too red or too yellow. You want something that is a little bit taupe looking. Might sound funny, but it just works really well as a, you know, a neutral contour on your face. Other products I love, believe it or not, would be something like this, which is a colour tattoo, and this is Taylor Grey. Now this, no, it's not Taylor Grey, this is the Permanent Taupe. It can look very grey, but depending on your skin tone, particularly if you are a little bit more sallow, this could work really well. One that's used quite a lot as well, and I know many makeup artists who use this, is the Groundwork Paint Pot by MAC. This works brilliantly as a light contour as well. Another good one would be Taylor Grey, which I mentioned already by accident. And this is another paint pot. This is a lovely another taupey colour. So these all work really well on lighter colours. Then if you have a deeper skin tone, you could definitely add products or use products that have more red and warmth in them. This is a really good one here. This is Mid-Tone Sepia, again by MAC. This is a pro product. This works brilliantly. This is really good for more medium skin tones. And then again, like for the darker skin tones, you could use some of those colours in those palettes that I was pointing out earlier. Today what I'm going to be using, and it's actually in this little kind of container that I depotted myself, but it's an RCMA colour, and it's in it's one of their shading creams, and it's in the colour S1, which is just a really lovely, again, slightly ashy brown, and that's why I love it. Then when it comes to highlights, there are loads to choose from. One of my favourites would be Pearl by MAC. It's a cream colour base. Luna for the very white is also very good because it is actually a white, slightly shimmery colour. We also have another RCMA colour here, and that's Pearl, which is just the exact same as Luna. Then of course, then for darker skin tones, there are many more golden ones, like some of the other cream colour bases by MAC. I can't remember some of the names quite now, but they do some lovely, more kind of goldy, peachy colours that work beautiful on darker skin tones. And other products that I really love for highlighting as well are highlighting pens, which are sometimes thought of as concealer pens, but they're generally more for highlighting. So this is Radiant Rose by MAC, and this is what I'm using as my highlight today. So quickly, I'll just show you the brushes I like to use when it comes to creams. This is one of my newer purchases. I got this in America, and it's the MAC 163. This works brilliantly for sculpting out the cheek because of the shape. So if you're using it you know, to sculpt the cheekbones, you'd use it on the narrow side, and then for any other areas you could twist it around and use it on the, you know, on its wider edge to cover more space, but that's brilliant. Synthetic haired brushes work best with cream products as well. This is another one that would be really good. It is an e.l.f. pointed foundation brush, but again the tapered edge is really good for contouring, so this would be a good one to go for. Very inexpensive of course because it is e.l.f. Then I love these duo fibre ones, the small kind of stumpy ones for contouring with creams. I think they are brilliant. And then this kind of thing as well, which is the Face Shape Brush by Zoeva. This is a fab one. It's kind of designed for that purpose, but I love it. The beveled edges as well do help with contouring out the different areas of the face, so that's brilliant. And then what I'm using today is actually this Flawless Concealer Brush by e.l.f. It's big enough that it works really well, especially if you have a kind of small face, for contouring. And of course it's synthetic haired as well, so that's why I love this guy. And then just quickly to show you what I will be using to contour my nose and the eye area, it's this guy here. It's the Precision Tapered P86 Brush by Sigma, and I like this again because it has that pointy edge. You can use it to really like kind of draw in the areas you want to shade, and then you can use its sides, the sides of the brush or the side of the brush to pat it out or kind of blend it out, and this is really good for getting in that shape around the eye area as well. So that's that guy. So if you're wondering where to contour, I'm not going to go into it because it would take all day. I'm just going to say if you want to minimize anything, that's where you contour. So if you have a wide face, particularly wide here in the center, then you contour around here. If you have a wide angle jaw, you can contour the jaw. If you are fairly oval shaped and there's nothing overly wide or overly prominent, then you can just do the under the cheekbones to give a little bit more definition, which is what I do. I also add a little bit to the jaw. They're not very prominent, but just to minimize them a little bit. And then something I wouldn't always do, especially because I have the fringe, but because I have a widow's peak, this is good for anyone who has a larger forehead or anything they want to minimize around the forehead area. I do contour around this area because, you know, with the widow's peak, it does give me a larger forehead, even though the hair kind of covers it. So there are loads of videos anyhow showing where to contour, but it's just whatever you want to minimize, that's what you contour. And then you highlight whatever you want to bring forward. So for instance, if you have a longer face, what you could do is contour around the forehead and the chin area, just to help give the appearance of a slightly more shortened face. And then you could highlight the sides, which will help make it appear wider, which will just basically give it a more balanced look. And then for me, what I always like to do is contour around the nose, because the tip of my nose is, like I've said it before, a good bit wider than the bridge, so that's another good tip as well. Some people have a wider bridge and a smaller tip, so what they like to do is contour at the bridge of the nose and then highlight the tip. So it's all down to what you want to minimize or maximize. So start off as you normally would with your primer of preference. I'm using the MAC CC cream, the lilac shade here. And then apply your foundation as normal. You're better off applying a sheer to medium coverage foundation when you're using cream products on top. Otherwise it could muddy in with the thicker foundation. So if you really like your heavier coverage, thicker foundations, then maybe powder contouring will be more your friend. Then once you have your foundation on, apply any correctors or concealers as you normally would. I always correct, or usually correct, my darkest under eye area using a peachy toned corrector, and then apply a brightening concealer on top of this. And then to banish any redness on the skin, I apply some concealers around the nose and the chin area and any blemishes I may have. It's much easier to correct these at this stage now rather than later on in the process. Then to contour, I apply some of the product onto the back of my hand or onto a wee palette and pick some up onto my brush. And then I just start to really roughly apply this on the areas of the face where I want to contour. You really don't have to be neat at all at this stage, and it's really handy working with creams because if you do make a mistake, it's really easily wiped away. Just wipe away what you don't want and then reapply it to where you do want it. So I apply it underneath my cheekbones, around the jaw area on the part that juts out, I suppose. Up around my temples is somewhere I would always apply it, and then for this video I'm applying it up around my widow's peak and around the top of my forehead. It's a good idea to clean off your brush so you don't add any more product when you're buffing in, or else get a clean brush and then just start to buff and blend everything into the skin. So the trick is to really keep buffing and blending until it is totally blended in, so that there's no harsh lines, that it's not muddy or mucky looking. And this might take a few minutes, but the trick is to really keep at it. And then I do like to apply a little bit of product just underneath my chin on the little double chin area, and that's a good idea if you do want to minimize that area. And then I switch back to my foundation brush and use this to again further buff it and blend it into the skin so it looks more skin-like rather than makeup-like. Then when working around smaller areas like on the nose or the eyes, I move to a smaller brush. I like this small little pointed synthetic brush, and first start to draw in again roughly the areas where you want to contour. So I am exaggerating them for this video just so you can definitely see what I'm doing. So I draw down along the sides of my nose and along the bottom of the tip, and try and keep this as straight as possible, and just narrow any place you want to narrow. So I narrow around the tip and a little bit around the bump on the center of my nose. And to get a really uplifted look to the eye, you can also apply some of your contour cream to the outer corner of your eye as if your bottom lash line was extending up. This will just really brighten and lift up the area, particularly when you have the highlighter on at a later stage. So again, just roughly apply it at the corner of your eye and lift it up towards your temple. Clean off your brush as before, and then use the side of this brush to buff and blend it into the skin, or rather kind of pat it into the skin. You can also use a clean blending brush or even your fingers at this stage, whatever works for you. But again, keep blending and buffing until it's not so obvious on the skin. Then when it gets to the highlighting stage, it's time to apply this where you want to highlight. This really acts to strengthen and support the contouring that you did, and adds a lot more dimension again to the face and brightens it up as well. So I like to apply some down to the center of my nose. This can be blended out with your finger because it's a liquid I'm using, but you can again use a sponge or a brush or whatever is needed. Try and make sure you don't put it on the contoured areas, and then apply it to the high points of your face or anywhere else you want to exaggerate. So I apply it to the top of my cheekbones, and then along the bottom of that contoured area at the corner of my eye. Again, it'll exaggerate that, and to my cupid's bow on my lips. So just blend this out and make sure that there's no harsh or obvious lines as usual. You can also apply the same product to the areas of the eye that you'd normally highlight, so to your brow bone area and to the inner corners of your eye, either side of your nose bridge. Again, it'll just brighten up and make everything more fresh and awake looking. So I'd probably blend this out a little bit more for everyday wear, but you could leave it at this stage, maybe buff it in a little bit more if you like a dewy, non-powdered look. But I like to leave it roughly like this so I can apply a powder over it. It'll make it look again a little bit more skin-like. So apply a translucent powder. You don't want anything too heavy or too full coverage. That's just going to cover everything that you've done. So stay away from anything like the Studio Fix Powder Plus foundation by MAC, which I know is a foundation, but a lot of people use as a setting powder. That will just cover up what you've used. You don't want anything that thick or heavy. You just want something that will just add a little layer of something over the top. So I hope this was helpful, guys. I will be doing my video on how I contour with powder next. I'll probably leave that, like I said, another week or two, and I will do it in a very similar format to this video. So if you've got any questions, as usual, leave them below, and I hope this was helpful. Thanks a million, guys, and I'll chat to you all really soon. Slán!